Hi, everyone. I just posted the latest episode for my Optimistic Future podcast. I had an interview with a gentleman named Christopher Andrews. He's an associate professor at Drew University, and he is their chair of sociology. And he wrote a book called The Overworked Consumer: Self-Checkout Supermarkets and the Do-It-Yourself Economy. So I'd been wanting to chat with someone about self-checkouts because, rightly or wrongly, and after our conversation, I think maybe wrongly, or at least not entirely rightly, for years I have been largely boycotting self-checkouts. I just made the assumption that self-checkouts were probably not that great for the workforce, that they were, kind of taking jobs away from folks who might need jobs. And I thought, you know what, if I have to stand in line a little bit longer and, let a human, give me a hand with checking out my groceries or my purchase at the drugstore or wherever they have self-checkouts, I figured I was probably doing a good thing in the world. And I'm not saying that I wasn't doing a good thing in the world. I don't think I was doing a bad thing. But after talking with Christopher, I have a much better understanding of the topic at hand. And quite frankly, part of the reason that I started the Optimistic Future podcast, I mean, the main reason is to try to elucidate things that we can all do in our day-to-day lives, just fairly easy things that we can all do to help make the world a better place. That's the whole mission statement basically of the Optimistic Future podcast. Sure, we can all band together and make a difference. It's not all doom and gloom out there by any stretch. But one of the other reasons is that I just really like learning about new things, and I want to see if I want to challenge my preconceived notions, and did that with this episode. And so I won't give all the punchlines away. Please, check out the episode if you're interested in this topic. But I was, again, under the impression that basically the stores that had self-checkouts were, raking in extra money with all the human resources that they were saving on, and having a negative impact on the job market. And to my understanding, and I don't pretend to fully understand this issue inside and out, but from what I understand from my conversation with Christopher, that maybe the original intention with bringing in self-checkouts was to make more money, and quite likely, quite probably at the expense of the job market. Don't get me started on just corporations and large businesses just really being mostly concerned with the bottom line. It seems to be the trend out there. Unfortunately, maybe it's not true across the board, but it seems to be in large part. But it looks like in large part that plan kind of backfired, and that there really hasn't necessarily been, it seems quite likely that there really hasn't been a net economic advantage to bringing in self-checkouts, and that stores seem to be in large part kind of stuck with them now. So anyways, interesting conversation. And please listen to the episode to learn more about it, or check out Christopher's book, the one that I mentioned earlier, the Overworked Consumer book that I mentioned. And then also, based on what he was saying, it doesn't sound like there's been any net negative impact on the job market for cashiers. He said that, to my understanding from our conversation, that there's actually more cashier jobs available now, even when you control for population growth. And actually listening to just in preparation for our chat, I listened to a podcast episode on the Freakonomics Radio podcast. Always an interesting podcast to listen to, interesting books to read as well, where he was interviewed along with some other experts in this area. And to my understanding, it's actually created these jobs for like more security guards, for example. It's quite interesting. Christopher gets into how there has been a significant level of theft increase around self-checkouts, and some of those thefts are just accidental, just folks literally forgetting to scan stuff that they left in their basket, or scanning things accidentally for maybe something that's worth less money. And then there's also folks where there's like straight up just organized crime around self-checkouts. So it's quite an interesting topic. But the take-home message for me, at least, was that I think that I can get off my high horse a little bit around the self-checkouts. I'm probably still going to pick the human cashier, in part because I'm stubborn and in part because, I don't know, it's just kind of nicer to interface with a human than a screen. But, if the lineup's really long and I'm in a rush or whatnot, I think I'll probably, I'll feel less guilty anyways using the self-checkout after the conversation I had with Christopher. Who knows what the future might hold, but again, it was an interesting conversation. And if this is a topic that's of interest to you, it's about a 30-minute long interview, and it's available via the Optimistic Future podcast, which is available on all the major podcasting platforms. Also, I have a separate YouTube channel for the Optimistic Future podcast as well. And if you listen to the episode or don't listen to the episode, but you have thoughts about self-checkouts or anything that you want to add, please post in the comment section below. Be curious to hear what you have to say about that. Also, if you have any topic ideas or speaker suggestions, interviewee suggestions for future episodes of the Optimistic Future podcast, be curious to hear about them. So please feel free to post in the comment section below about that as well. And also, just a friendly reminder that the sponsor for the Optimistic Future podcast is Made Local Charity. Made Local Charity is a Canadian charity that I started up, and basically it's a website that features companies that manufacture goods in Canada. So they actually have to make the goods in Canada, whether it's clothing, whether it's tools, whether it's furniture, mattresses, you name it. The vast majority of things that you might want, there are Canadian manufacturers. If you're listening to this and you're in the US of A, we do have a American offshoot as well. So the Canadian URL is madelocalgroup.ca. The American version is madelocalgroup.com. In my opinion, there's a lot of advantages on an individual level, but also on a societal level to purchasing things that are made in Canada if you're Canadian, made in the US if you're in the US, or just quite frankly made in North America if you're a North American, just not needing to ship things from abroad as far, so reduce environmental impact, not shipping things from as far away, like say overseas, helps to promote the local economy, creates more jobs, and all of that good stuff. Made Local Charity, any revenue that's generated from our sponsors is used to help run our website to cover those costs, but then also any additional proceeds are sent to another Canadian registered charity, this amazing group called Second Harvest. Second Harvest is this group that basically collects food that's perfectly good, but it was destined for the compost bin or the landfill. So grocery stores that weren't able to sell off certain amounts of produce, or bakeries that weren't able to sell off enough bread or whatnot, they basically collect that food and then they distribute it to local food banks to be distributed to folks who need to rely on food banks. So it's just an amazing initiative. It really warms my heart every time I think about it and talk about it, because essentially they're doing multiple good things. They're reducing food waste, which is a big problem. We had we had an Optimistic Future podcast episode about that a few episodes back, about the issues with food waste. So they're reducing food waste, and then they're also giving back to the community as well. So there's just so many wins there, and it just really wonderful. So any additional revenue that we're able to bring in through the Made Local registered charity, we send over to Second Harvest to help support their wonderful initiatives. So please consider checking out madelocalgroup.ca or madelocalgroup.com. There are newsletter pop-ups that will pop up there, so please consider joining the newsletter. We send out those newsletters, and just helps to grow our mailing list. And what we plan to do once our mailing list hits a certain critical mass is basically reach out to larger companies and say, hey, there's a lot of folks out there who really care about locally made products. Maybe you could start carrying some of those locally made products, and it's just going to help to bolster the local economy, all those hardworking small and medium-sized businesses that are actually making products in our respective countries. So please help us out. Consider joining the mailing list. Check out the website. Tell your friends. And we really appreciate the help, because we're just trying to do some good with these charitable initiatives. So I will leave it there for now.